What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here for the quartering, and down goes McDonald's. McDonald's getting some very, very bad news, as well as their stock reacting today, heading south about as fast as the birds in fall, and another major restaurant franchise forced to shut their doors due to, well, not just the $20 minimum wage, but much more than that. And I want to kind of talk a little bit about that because obviously this situation is more complicated than just the minimum wage. Yes, obviously, I struggle because I don't want people to not be able to earn a living, right? I don't want people to not be able to feed their families or pay for rent, or if you've seen the cost of just an apartment. I mean, there was a time even in my life when you could work at McDonald's and have an apartment. I mean, probably have a roommate, but you still had an apartment, and you worked at a fast food joint. You know, you and your buddy both making $7 an hour, could have like a crummy, duplex or something like that, band practice in the garage, things of that nature. Those days are long gone. It's not just the high minimum wage and the absorbently high cost to food and everything else. It's the perfect combination of everything. Now, when people talk about McDonald's, they forget that most of them are independently owned or owned by smaller like conglomerates that might own 10 or 15 locations. In Wisconsin, where I live, there's, I think it's called Acme Corp. I'm not exactly sure. They used to be a client of mine when I repaired computers a million years ago, but I don't know if they still own them. But anyway, it can be owned by just mom and pop shops, even though you see a McDonald's, right? The owner of a fast food franchise store, which has been operating for more than 30 years, has now closed his doors for good. The branch of McDonald's at Stonestown Galleria, about 8 miles south of downtown San Francisco, abruptly shut on Sunday with no notice. It was the latest casualty of California's new $20 minimum wage. Workers saw their wages rise from $16 to $20 an hour on January 1st, but the added expense for owners to pay their workers have hit businesses hard. Now, again, people will point out, rightfully so, the extraordinarily high level of profit that McDonald's as a corporation makes, but the franchises, the individual owners, aren't making that kind of money, right? Fast food chains across the state have been cutting jobs as a way to cut costs, but franchise owner Scott Roderick was forced to take drastic action after the landlord was unwilling to negotiate the long-term lease at a, quote, sensible price for the location. This is what happens to a lot of these places too. You have, high overhead costs that maybe used to be okay when times are good. Times aren't so good anymore, and people don't want to let people out of these leases, which I understand. Roderick also explained that the property taxes and shared tenant mall fees were also the highest paid for a single location in the entire company, and was faced with no choice but to close it down. It's a gut-wrenching day for my family, Roderick said. All of Roderick's employees have been offered jobs at nearby McDonald's, with the vast majority of them being able to stay with the company. So that's good news. It's been my pleasure for the entire team, and I serve the 19th Avenue of Inglewood neighborhoods for more than 30 years, the note wrote on the door. All of our valued team members have been offered opportunities to continue working with my restaurant company and or other nearby McDonald's. They added almost 10,000 positions across chains from Pizza Hut to Burger King have been cut since the higher minimum wage came into effect on April 1st. Now, again, people will point out, hey, McDonald's could make a little less money. And I don't necessarily disagree with you. At some point, something's got to give. I mean, the idea of going to McDonald's now for most people is like an insane luxury, which is bananas because their food is garbage here. To think of McDonald's food as like a luxury item or something that you have to think twice about the price of it is bonkers to me. McDonald's used to be like, oh man, I don't want to eat it like 2 days in a row. I know it's not good for me. Even when I was young and I had like a good metabolism, like now it's like, man, I'm not paying $15 for a burger. That's insanity. On top of that, chains also have been shuttering. Restaurants include beloved Mexican Chain Rubio's Coastal Grill, which earlier this month filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and closed all 48 locations in the state. Last week, Arby's Roast Beef, it's been a fixture on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood for 55 years, shut its doors. With inflation, food costs have gone way up. The $20 an hour minimum wage has been the nail in the coffin. General Manager Gary Hush told the LA Times. I mean, look, if you have, I don't know how many thousands of hours of labor in a week. Let's say you have 10 employees, 20 employees that all work 40 hours. Let's say you have 1,000 hours in labor cost every week. Now your increased cost for running that operation just went up $4,000 a week or $16,000 a month. And that's if you only have 1,000 hours in labor to stay open. I've seen this around where I live. I don't know if you notice this, but restaurants are not open as long. They're cutting their hours. They're not open. You see fast food chains have found a way to get around the ever rising minimum wage, and it's not good news for the staff because this is exactly what everyone knew would happen. Fast food chains in California are replacing staff with digital order kiosks as a way to cut costs for the minimum wage in the state where it was raised to $20 an hour. By the way, look at McDonald's stock today. Not looking so good. But if you look at it over the last 6 months, oops, really not looking good. Down nearly 12%. Year to date, down 13%. So the stock for McDonald's is plummeting. And this is telling you that the market, the people who invest, aren't really convinced that this $5 summer deal is going to work. I mean, if you look at a 5-year high, this was a stock that was worth almost $300 a share. Year to date, down to $250 and just plummeting, and it's because people just don't want to pay what it's going to cost now to get a burger. They'll go to Chili's, they'll go to Applebee's, they'll go to a mom and pop shop where the burgers are made in small batches by an actual person who cares. Actually, not to say, when I worked at fast food, most everyone that I worked at, I felt like the fast food workers got a bad rap. I mean, there were bad ones, but I cared about my job. Everyone else I worked for cared about their jobs. Now, was I going above and beyond for $5.25 an hour? No, but I did my job, and I wasn't doing, you know what I mean? That whole stigma around fast food workers is, in my experience, has been baloney. So after 2 years of raising prices for consumers, restaurant bosses now say they simply cannot raise them again. So looking for other ways to cut overheads, and the labor will be the biggest cost. Having fewer staff is the easier way. It's a cruel irony for workers and their unions that battled for years to get higher wages, a move critics warned would lead to job losses. Harsh Guy, that's a kind of an interesting name. A major Burger King franchise with 140 restaurants on the West Coast plans to have digital kiosks in all of them in just 2 months. I mean, you're gonna have 3 people running these restaurants. That's how all of this is gonna shake out. You're gonna have 3 people. You're gonna have 2 cooks and a manager or something like that, and that's it. And that one manager is gonna make $150,000 a year, and he or she is gonna have to work 150 hours a week. That's how these restaurants will run until the wage hike. He had planned to roll them out over the next 5 to 10 years. So what's happened is they've just sped up these digital kiosks, which is, by the way, what you're going to see everywhere. I've already started to see it in more and more locations. And by the way, I guess maybe I'm just an old guy. Maybe younger people actually prefer them. They actually prefer the digital kiosk. I hate it. If I'm coming, I also don't like self-checkout, right? I'm coming into your restaurant, I'm not doing all of the work. I might as well just go in the back and cook my own burger. You see, even before this law was made official this year, chains including Pizza Hut and Round Table let go of more than 1,000 delivery workers to brace for the financial ramifications of the change. The law signed by Governor Newsom in September last year was to increase fast food workers' minimum wage to $20 an hour at chains that had more than 60 locations. Why? Don't know. Right? Why should somebody who works at a location that has 59 locations not get the very same raise? I don't really understand that. What if they have 20 locations? That's a lot of locations, 20 locations. But they don't get the raise? It is one of the dumbest PR moves ever. And again, you see all these restaurants that have closed. We've talked about them. You look at this tweet from the New York Post. You know, again, people don't understand how franchises work because you see idiots like Dave Thompson saying, well, McDonald's made a lot of money. Yeah, McDonald's, the corporation did, but the franchises didn't. Socialism in action. People won't pay $15 for a Big Mac. Sorry, fast food is a first job, not a career. And that, to me, I've always said that. I don't mean to like disparage people that work at fast food, but they know that. I worked fast food. I worked at fast food. I worked at Walmart. I worked at Best Buy. I worked at just about everywhere. You know, at minimum wage, every minimum wage. I was a dishwasher for 2 years at a Greek restaurant. And then, I've worked every Joe job, every entry-level job ever. And it was never my dream to stay working there forever. And you see the whole point of this is to get rid of fast food. Quote, when unskilled labor meets the commies who try to convince them that they're worth much more than they are, this is what happens. Now, I wouldn't say working at McDonald's is, necessarily unskilled. There's training. You have to learn how to do certain things. But that's, again, less fast food available, the better. I don't believe this. I've seen dozens of shuttered McDonald's in my lifetime, especially in rough neighborhoods. The real inescapable minimum wage is zero. Simple economics, really. I mean, everybody here, you get what you vote for. Too bad, so sad. You're going to see a lot of these restaurants closing down over the next couple of years. And, this is the not just the minimum wage. It's the high cost for goods when it meets that the market simply cannot sustain. The market has said we aren't paying $15 for a quarter pounder. So now they're firing everybody, replacing them with kiosks, and they're just closing locations or they're closing the number of hours that they're open. This is bad. I bet you a lot of those people who are making $16 an hour, but now they're making $0 an hour, probably not McLovin' it. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave a like on it. If you haven't yet, please subscribe or follow down below. We'll talk to you again real soon.